Today, we're jumping right into a pretty intense debate that blew up online, all centered on the Star Trek franchise, fan criticism, and this term you hear a lot these days, review bombing. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at why some people feel like the entire franchise is in danger. Then we'll get into the specific warning from a Star Trek artist that really set this whole thing off, and of course the huge fan rebuttal that followed. After that, we'll dive into some pretty serious accusations of manipulation, and finally, we'll try to get to the bottom of the big question, who's actually to blame here? So this entire firestorm really kicks off around the new show Starfleet Academy. And get this, even before most people had seen a single minute of it, the reaction from a lot of fans was, well, it was overwhelmingly negative. This sparked a much bigger conversation about what fan criticism is for and what it could mean for the future of Star Trek itself.
From one side of the argument, the view is that the way fans are showing their displeasure isn't just, harmless feedback. No, they see it as a direct threat that could have some really severe, maybe even franchise-ending consequences.
And really, this is the question that's at the heart of everything. Is it even possible for fan backlash to bring down a giant that's been around for 60 years? Is that a real threat or just a huge overreaction? All right, let's get into the specifics of what was said. We're going to look at the exact claims made by a Star Trek artist who really laid out what they think is on the line. The artist's warning is about as direct and serious as it gets. They're basically saying, hey, this kind of fan behavior isn't going to get you the better shows you want, it's going to get you no shows at all for a very long time. And what's so striking here is how specific that number is. This isn't just some vague threat, right? It puts a number on it. It frames the stakes as a potential decade, maybe even a decade and a half, with absolutely zero new Star Trek, a total content drought. And this is really the core of their argument. The idea that if the franchise does fail, the blame doesn't just fall on the creators. No, it's shared. The fans whose actions could bring it all down would be just as responsible. Well, as you can probably guess, that warning did not go over well with everyone. It sparked a really strong and detailed rebuttal from some YouTube commentators who just saw this whole situation completely differently. You can see right away that these two sides aren't even working with the same dictionary. One side sees a planned, malicious attack designed to cause harm. The other side says that's nonsense. This is just what happens when you put out a bad product and people don't like it. And yeah, the hosts of the video, they absolutely do not mince words. They put the blame 100% on the show's producers. In their eyes, the root of all this negativity isn't malicious fans, it's a poor product. Period.
So, they build their case around a few key points. They argue the new shows just aren't Star Trek anymore, that the creators are pointing fingers instead of taking responsibility, and that giving these shows positive reviews would just reward bad work. And all of that leads them to a pretty powerful conclusion. No Star Trek at all is actually better than the Star Trek they're getting now. And from here, the whole disagreement gets even more intense. It moves beyond just blame and into a straight-up accusation of manipulating the audience. The theory they put forward is this. Fans are being told they have to publicly support a show they don't like, Starfleet Academy, in order to maybe someday get the show they actually want, which is Star Trek Legacy. It's like holding a future show hostage. So, the commentators lay out what they see as a kind of four-step playbook for manipulation. It starts with fans asking for one thing but getting another. Then, when they criticize the new show, they're told to support it anyway to prove the brand is still a good investment. It effectively weaponizes their hope for a future project to silence any real criticism of the current one. So, after all that, it really all comes down to one big, fundamental question. When a franchise this beloved seems to be stumbling, who is ultimately responsible? The writer being critiqued seems to believe there's a definite line in the sand, a line between what they call good and fair criticism and, well, intellectual vandalism. But the YouTube hosts argue that's a line that hasn't been crossed at all. They say their criticism is just honest feedback. And this right here really sums up the entire fight, doesn't it? Is failure a shared responsibility between the people who make the content and the audience that consumes it? Or does it all fall squarely on the shoulders of the creators for making something that people just don't want? Ultimately, this whole ugly fight over Star Trek is about way more than just one TV show. It shines a spotlight on a much bigger question for all of entertainment today. In our world of instant online feedback and fan campaigns, where is that line between being a constructive critic and a destructive saboteur? What is the role and what is the responsibility of being a fan?